Tony, on, players do get rest days, practice rest days. But I think there is an important designation between, are they just resting because, they have a scheduled off day, or do they have a concern that they are
totally
that they are working with? And I think that was the difference between having, what Steph called a pro day, a rest day, and having something that would actually be of concern for not practicing.
So I'm glad
that hesitation right there tells you everything. A beat reporter struggling to find the words for what she's about to say about her own head coach. Because what's happening inside the Indiana Fever organization right now isn't just messy, it's calculated. And the league office just confirmed it.
Of Chloe Peterson, shout out to you. We're gonna be talking about Chloe Peterson a little bit more in this blog as well. Shout out to Chloe Peterson. It says the Indiana Fever have received a warning for failure to report Caitlin Clark's injury status leading up to Wednesday's game, league sources tell me. Now, we all know the Indiana Fever were flat out liars. They were scamming the people. They were just...
The WNBA league office officially handed down a warning to the Indiana Fever for failing to report Caitlin Clark's injury status leading up to Wednesday's game. Reporter Chloe Peterson broke the story, and she's been driving this coverage from the inside. A warning is the absolute minimum the league could have issued. Fans bought tickets expecting to see the most marketable player in women's basketball history. They didn't get her, and they didn't get a straight answer about why.
And it looks like the Indiana Fever have already been trying to be on top of that, because if you look at this here, also courtesy of Chloe Peterson, Caitlin Clark back is probable for tomorrow's game against Golden State. She's the only player on the injury report for Indiana. So the Indiana Fever are taking some sort of measures here to kind of cover their rear end. Now,
look at the timing. Within 24 hours of that league warning, the Fever suddenly produced a clean injury report. Caitlin Clark, back, probable, the only player listed. Funny how transparency arrives the moment consequences do. This is damage control, not a culture shift.
I thought Chloe was going to go. So I just looked at her.
Well, kind of on top of that with your point about transparency, James, I think the messaging from Steph about Caitlin's injury just overall was not necessarily clear. Pre-game, she said, she's healthy, we're not managing anything. And she was very, direct about the fact that they're not managing anything and she's healthy. But then obviously we had the question of, if she's healthy and they're not managing anything, why is she not playing? And that led to your question of, is she injured post-game?
This is the contradiction that broke the story open. Pre-game, head coach Stephanie White said Clark was healthy and the team wasn't managing anything. Post-game, when asked directly if Clark was injured, White redirected to the training staff and called it a sore back. Healthy or sore, managed or not managed. Both versions came from the same coach within hours of each other. You can't have it both ways, and Peterson refused to let her.
Cooking.
Steph White did not directly answer, I would say. She said her back is sore, anything more than that, that's the training staff, which is not a no. So I think kind of just on top of all of the injury report stuff, the messaging on if Caitlin Clark is injured, what the injury is, if it's ongoing, is just unclear as well, especially with the fact, Steph said it was not ongoing, but then earlier in the season, a week or two ago, she said, Caitlin, along with a lot of other players, they're going to be going back to the tunnel to be getting adjustments.
Now we get to the detail that really doesn't add up. Earlier this season, White mentioned that Clark and other players have been going back to the tunnel during games to receive adjustments, chiropractic adjustments, mid-game. That's not standard load management language. That's not a planned rest day. That's a player whose back is unstable enough to require intervention while the game is still being played. And yet the team's official position has bounced between healthy, sore, ongoing, and not ongoing, depending on which press conference you're watching.
Getting her back adjusted because she said, or Caitlin said, her back gets out of line pretty quickly. And I guess my question about that would be, is this all the same thing? where then it is an ongoing thing, or is the back issue that kept her out of yesterday's game a separate thing that is not ongoing, you know?
And Kate,
but the thing is, we can never get transparent answers. Shout out to Chloe Peterson for not being afraid to be honest, regardless of what your job title and stuff is, and what responsibilities you may have. And you know.
This is the moment Peterson asks the question the front office doesn't want asked. Is the back issue that kept Clark out an isolated event, or is it the same condition requiring those in-game tunnel visits? If it's the same condition, that's a chronic injury that should have been on every report. If it's separate, then the team has a star player dealing with multiple back problems in a rookie-plus season and chose not to disclose it. Either answer is bad for the Fever, so they answered neither. This is also where Peterson's professional risk becomes obvious. Beat reporters who push coaches this hard on contradictions often find their credentials quietly questioned. Access journalism rewards softball questions and punishes accountability. Peterson is doing the opposite, on camera, with her name attached. The Fever sold tickets in Connecticut, Atlanta, and now Indianapolis with Clark as the marquee draw. Secondary market prices for games she's expected to play routinely run 3 to 5 times higher than games she's not. When the team lists her as healthy hours before tip-off and then sits her, that isn't a basketball decision anymore. That's a financial event for thousands of ticket holders who made purchasing decisions based on incomplete information. The league's injury reporting protocols exist precisely to prevent this. The NBA's reporting rules, which the WNBA models in part, were tightened specifically because vague designations were costing fans money and sportsbooks credibility. A warning from the league office means the WNBA agrees the Fever crossed a line. It does not mean the line gets enforced going forward, and that's the open question. Stephanie White is in her first year as head coach of the Fever after coming over from Connecticut. She inherited a roster built around the highest-profile draft pick in league history. Every press conference is a referendum on whether the organization can professionalize fast enough to match the spotlight. Right now, the answer is no. The messaging is inconsistent, the medical disclosures are vague, and the head coach defaults to the phrase "talk to the training staff" whenever a question gets specific. Training staffs don't hold press conferences. That deflection is a wall, not an answer. Compare this to how other organizations handle star player injuries. When LeBron James misses a game, the Lakers list the specific issue. When Patrick Mahomes is limited in practice, the Chiefs report it by body part and participation level. Those teams understand that vague reporting damages the league's credibility with broadcasters, sponsors, and the betting market that now drives a significant portion of fan engagement. The Fever appear to be learning that lesson in real time, under public pressure, after a league warning. That's the slowest possible way to learn it. Peterson's role in all of this deserves recognition. She's the Indianapolis Star's lead Fever reporter. She sits in that room every game day. She knows that pressing Stephanie White publicly on inconsistencies can cost her one-on-one access, exclusive interviews, and the kind of insider relationships that beat reporters spend years building. She's choosing accountability over access. That choice is rare, and the Fever's reaction to it over the next few weeks will tell you everything about whether this organization wants real coverage or convenient coverage. The fans are paying attention too. Secondary market data shows ticket prices for upcoming Fever games softening when Clark's status is unclear. The novelty grace period is ending. Buyers want certainty, and a team that has fumbled 4 straight injury disclosures isn't going to get the benefit of the doubt much longer. A warning today becomes a fine tomorrow if the pattern continues, and fines escalate. Here's what's coming next. The Fever now have to live with heightened scrutiny on every injury report. The league office will be watching submission times, specificity of designations, and consistency between coach statements and official reports. One more violation and we're talking about financial penalties, not warnings. Stephanie White has to decide whether she's going to keep performing this dance at the podium or commit to a single clear answer. And the front office has to decide whether protecting their coach's preferred ambiguity is worth the trust they're burning with the fan base that built this league's recent boom. The bigger question is whether this is just a Fever problem or a WNBA problem. The league's reporting standards have lagged behind every other major American sport for years. It worked when the audience was smaller and the stakes were lower. With Clark drawing record television numbers and ticket prices reaching NBA-adjacent levels for marquee matchups, those days are over. The league has to enforce its own rules with real teeth, or fans will stop trusting any injury designation from any team. So here's the question I want you to wrestle with in the comments. Is Stephanie White intentionally misleading the public to gain a competitive advantage? Or is she just bad at handling media in her first year leading a franchise this scrutinized? Because those are two different problems with two different solutions, and how the league responds depends entirely on which one this is. Drop your take below, hit the like, hit subscribe, and tell me whether Peterson should keep pushing or pull back to protect her access. I want to hear it.